In a world where trust is everything, this gym coach betrayed more than just his students' faith. What began as a promise of discipline turned into something much darker, a secret that would rock an entire community. For Sophie and the other gym-goers, their coach was more than just a fitness instructor. He was a mentor, a figure of authority, and a person they trusted with their most vulnerable moments. But what they didn't know was that behind the pristine mirrors and workout machines, something far more sinister was taking place. They would spend months pouring their sweat, their hearts, and their fears into his hands, unaware of the hidden cameras that filmed their every move. They thought they were growing stronger, but instead they were becoming victims of a twisted betrayal. This story doesn't just uncover a crime. It reveals the dark side of trust. How far can a man go when he's given complete control over others? And what happens when the line between mentorship and exploitation is crossed? But here's the chilling truth. The footage was never meant to be seen by the victims. Until one day, Sophie stumbled upon something in the gym. Something she shouldn't have. And that discovery will send her and everyone she thought they knew spiraling into a world of secrets that no one could have imagined. What did Sophie find? Stay tuned. The shocking truth is just beginning to unfold. Coach Maxwell was a name that carried weight in the fitness world. A former athlete turned gym owner, he had built a reputation not only for his rigorous training techniques, but also for pushing people beyond their limits. He promised results, mental, physical, and emotional transformation. Sophie had heard about him long before stepping into the gym. "He helped me get my body back," former clients would say. "He taught me how to believe in myself." These glowing testimonials were the push Sophie needed to sign up. From the very first session, Coach Maxwell seemed to understand what Sophie needed. He saw her potential, spotting strengths in her she had never known existed. He encouraged her to dig deep and gave tough love to match his high expectations. Sophie admired his dedication, trusting him completely. However, Maxwell's approach soon began to blur the lines. His coaching wasn't just about fitness, it felt personal, almost invasive. During private sessions, he would ask about her family, relationships, and deepest insecurities. Sophie chalked it up to his commitment to help her grow. One day, Maxwell asked to film their sessions, claiming it was for tracking progress. "Just so you can see the transformation," he said, his voice calm and convincing. Sophie, uneasy but trusting, agreed. But something was off. Sophie accidentally stumbled upon a drawer in the gym's back office. Inside, she found a stack of hidden footage. Whose sessions were these? Before she could think further, another student who had been mysteriously absent recently appeared, standing in the gym parking lot. Was it a coincidence? What did this student know? Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The footage in the back office lingered in her mind. She knew she had to confront Maxwell, but the situation was more complicated than it seemed. Sophie wasn't the only one who felt uncomfortable. Rachel, another student, had started acting strangely, withdrawn after her private sessions with Coach Maxwell. At first, Rachel brushed it off, telling Sophie that she was just feeling off from the intense workouts. But Sophie began to notice something troubling. Rachel wasn't attending group classes anymore, and her social media, once active and full of fitness content, went silent. Sophie tried texting her, but there was no response. The gym, as usual, brushed off the concerns, attributing Rachel's absence to personal issues or taking a break. Yet Sophie couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something deeper was at play. One evening, while training alone, Sophie overheard a conversation between two gym staff members. They were discussing Rachel's progress in hushed tones, using words like "too much" and "not what we expected." Sophie's heart began to race. What did they mean by that? Was Rachel part of something larger that she hadn't realized? Determined to find answers, Sophie secretly searched the gym's private training area. She found a locked drawer, one similar to the one in the back office. Could it be that the footage of Rachel was hidden there too? Sophie's hand hovered over the drawer. Should she open it? Would this be the breaking point? As Sophie dug deeper into her suspicions, she began to notice more inconsistencies. Coach Maxwell was well liked by the gym staff and clients, But there was something about his mannerisms that no longer seemed genuine. His charm, once magnetic, began to feel rehearsed. He pushed his students hard, sometimes too hard. But his methods were always justified by the results. "Discipline is the key to progress," he'd say, almost as a mantra. Sophie continued to believe in his words, even as doubts crept in. Rachel's absence, however, hung heavily on her mind. Sophie's own sessions started to feel more invasive as Maxwell's questions grew personal. At first it was about her fitness goals. Then it was about her childhood, her relationships, and her fears. Every time Sophie tried to shift the conversation back to her training, he skillfully steered it toward her private life. Despite her growing discomfort, Sophie couldn't deny the physical transformation she was seeing in herself. She was stronger, leaner, and felt more confident. Maxwell's praise fed her need for validation. But when he asked her to film their sessions again, she hesitated. "It's for your own good," he insisted, his tone now more persuasive than ever. "You need to see how far you've come." Still, something inside her told her this was no longer about fitness. Sophie's gut screamed that this was the beginning of something much darker. The next day, Sophie came across a new folder on Maxwell's laptop. It was labeled with her name. Why would he have a folder with her name on it? Her hand trembled as she opened it. Inside were more videos, but these were different. Sophie's heart pounded as she stared at the screen. The folder with her name on it contained hidden footage from her training sessions. But there was something far more disturbing. She noticed her own reflection in the gym mirror, standing in the exact spot she had trained countless times before. Only this time it wasn't the footage she remembered. The camera was positioned differently, capturing far more than just her movements. Her stomach turned as she saw herself in vulnerable positions. Too close to the camera, too private. These weren't just training videos. These were intimate moments of her life, taken without her permission. She froze, the weight of the discovery sinking in. Had Maxwell been filming everyone? Sophie quickly closed the laptop, but the damage was already done. Her mind raced, replaying every session she'd had with him. The personal questions, the hidden cameras, the weirdly intimate conversations. It was all coming together in a way that she couldn't deny. The man she trusted had been exploiting her, and perhaps every student at the gym. In a panic, Sophie ran to the back office to confront Maxwell, but what she found stopped her cold. He wasn't there. Instead, she found another folder, this one filled with images of other students, each marked with notes. Sophie's breath caught in her throat. Why were there names on these files? What had Maxwell been keeping track of? Suddenly, she heard footsteps. Sophie turned to see Rachel, the missing student, standing in the doorway, her face pale. What was Rachel doing here? Was she trying to warn Sophie? Or had she already known what Maxwell was hiding? Sophie didn't know whether to run or stay. Was this the moment everything would change? Sophie's mind raced as she confronted Rachel in the gym's back office. Rachel's eyes darted nervously, avoiding direct eye contact. She knew something, Sophie could tell. But the more Sophie pressed, the more Rachel shut down, insisting that everything was fine. She wasn't ready to admit the truth, not yet. But Sophie wasn't about to let it go. "I know what's going on, Rachel. Maxwell's been recording us. Our personal moments," Sophie said, her voice trembling with both fear and anger. Rachel's face turned pale. She backed away slowly, almost as if she had been caught in something far deeper than Sophie had realized. Was Rachel involved? Was she too trapped by Maxwell's manipulations to speak out? Sophie's heart sank. The answers she desperately needed seemed just out of reach. Rachel hesitated, then whispered, "You need to leave. Now." Sophie's confusion deepened. Why was she warning her? Was she trying to protect Maxwell? Or was there more to the story? Before Sophie could ask any more questions, Rachel disappeared down the hall, her footsteps fading into the distance. Determined, Sophie decided to go straight to the gym's owner, Holly, to demand answers. But as she reached the office, she was shocked to see Maxwell and Holly talking in hushed tones, their voices rising in intensity. Sophie's pulse quickened. What were they hiding? She quietly stepped closer, hoping to overhear something that could unravel this web of deception. Just then she heard Maxwell's voice, low and threatening. "If you don't cover this up, everything's going to come crashing down." Sophie froze. What was Maxwell threatening Holly with? And what exactly was at stake? Sophie's heart raced as she stood outside the office, trying to process what she had just overheard. Maxwell's voice echoed in her head. "If you don't cover this up, everything's going to come crashing down." She had to know more. What was he hiding? And what did he have over Holly? Sophie had no choice but to take matters into her own hands. The next day, Sophie returned to the gym under the guise of a regular workout session. Her mind was elsewhere, focused on the evidence she needed to collect. She had to find something concrete. A document, a file, anything that could prove Maxwell's guilt. But as she walked into the gym, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The gym's surveillance cameras were turned off. Her heart pounded. Had Maxwell anticipated her next move? Had he been watching her all along? Sophie's instincts screamed at her to leave, but she knew she couldn't back down now. She needed to gather evidence, not just for herself, but for every other person Maxwell had exploited. She managed to slip into the storage room, where she found a hidden drawer, barely noticeable among the clutter. Inside was a flash drive. Sophie hesitated for a moment, then grabbed it. The weight of it in her hand felt heavy, as if it were the key to everything. As she was about to leave, a figure stepped into the room. It was Rachel again, her face pale and anxious. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, looking nervously around. "He's watching." Sophie froze. Had Rachel been sent to stop her? Or was she finally ready to help? Sophie's heart raced as she clutched the flash drive in her hand, the weight of the evidence both a relief and a terrifying burden. But Rachel's warning echoed in her mind. He's watching. Had Maxwell somehow discovered her investigation? Was he aware of everything she had uncovered? Rachel's face was pale as she stood in the storage room doorway. "You don't understand," she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Sophie stepped closer, desperate for answers. "I need to know, Rachel. What's really going on here?" Rachel hesitated, her hands shaking. Finally, she whispered, "I wasn't the first. There are more. Maxwell's been doing this for years. But you can't go public. It'll destroy everything. More victims." Sophie's stomach twisted. What had she walked into? Rachel's words felt like a confession, a warning, a plea for Sophie to stop before it was too late. But Sophie couldn't stop now. She had to expose Maxwell for what he was. Rachel's silence spoke volumes, but Sophie was determined to get the truth out, no matter the cost. As she turned to leave, Rachel grabbed her arm. "I'm not safe." "None of us are." Sophie jerked her arm away. What did Rachel mean by that? Sophie rushed out of the storage room, but something didn't sit right. The gym felt too quiet, the air thick with tension. She rushed to her car, eager to review the flash drive, but when she unlocked it, her heart stopped. The file wasn't what she expected. It was another video, one she hadn't seen before. The footage showed Rachel, but she was with Maxwell, looking terrified, pleading for him to stop. Was Rachel involved all along, or had she been forced into this web of manipulation too? Sophie's head spun as she stared at the video on the flash drive. Rachel's pleading face was impossible to ignore. Her words echoed in Sophie's mind. "I wasn't the first. There are more." The video only confirmed what Sophie had feared. This wasn't an isolated incident. Maxwell had been systematically manipulating and filming his students, and Rachel's involvement was far deeper than Sophie had imagined. Sophie felt a growing sense of betrayal. Was Rachel truly a victim, or had she been part of the cover-up all along? She needed answers, and fast. But before she could delve further into the video, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The message was short and chilling. "You're digging too deep. Stop before it's too late." Sophie's stomach sank. Who was behind this message? Was Maxwell aware of her investigation? She quickly deleted the text, her hands shaking. There was no turning back now. Determined to get to the truth, Sophie met with Detective Claire, hoping that her help would make a difference. As soon as Sophie entered the detective's office, she knew something was off. Claire's demeanor was different, colder, more distant. "I've seen the footage," Claire said, her voice tight. Maxwell's been under investigation for similar cases before, but every time they all disappear. The victims, the evidence. It's like he's untouchable. Sophie's heart raced. Why hadn't she been told about these past investigations? Why was Claire holding back? Just then, the door to Claire's office slammed open. A uniformed officer stepped in, holding a folder. Maxwell's name was on it. "We have a problem," the officer said, his voice grim. Was it too late to stop Maxwell? Or had the walls finally started closing in on him? Sophie felt a chill run down her spine as she stared at the officer, the folder in his hand bearing Maxwell's name. The words hung heavy in the air. "We have a problem." Sophie's mind raced, unable to comprehend what this meant. Was this the breakthrough they needed? Or had they already lost the battle? The officer set the folder down on Claire's desk, flipping it open. "This just came in from the surveillance team. Maxwell's activities go far beyond the gym. We've found evidence linking him to multiple missing persons cases." Sophie's blood ran cold. Missing persons? Maxwell's web of deception was far wider than she ever imagined. How had he managed to stay under the radar for so long? The realization hit her like a punch in the stomach. Maxwell had been operating with complete impunity for years, manipulating students, erasing evidence, and now, potentially, causing disappearances. Sophie could feel the weight of the case pressing down on her shoulders. Detective Claire stood up, her face tight with determination. "We need to confront him, and we need to do it now. The longer we wait, the more victims he's going to claim." Sophie nodded, but as they headed toward the door, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text. It was a phone call. Sophie's heart skipped a beat as she saw the caller ID. "Rachel." "Sophie, you need to listen carefully." Rachel's voice trembled on the other end. "Maxwell knows what you're doing. He's coming for you." Sophie's mind spun. How did Maxwell know? Was Rachel warning her, or was she part of the trap? Just then, Claire's phone rang. It was the surveillance team. "We found something. Maxwell's on the move." Was this the final showdown? Or was this just the beginning of a much larger nightmare? Sophie's hands trembled as she hung up the phone, the gravity of Rachel's warning sinking in. Maxwell knew. He had to know everything, every step Sophie had taken. But why hadn't he made a move until now? What was he planning? "Maxwell's on the move," Detective Claire repeated, her voice steady but tense. The room buzzed with urgency. "We need to get to him before he disappears again." Sophie and Claire raced to the car, every second feeling like an eternity. Sophie's mind was reeling. The man she had trusted, the coach who had seemed like a mentor, was now a predator, and she had to face him. The drive to Maxwell's house was quick, but Sophie's heart pounded painfully in her chest. Would they make it in time? What would they find when they got there? Sophie's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Claire's phone buzzing. She picked it up, her face changing in an instant. "They've found him," Claire said, a cold finality in her voice. "He's at the gym, alone." Sophie's stomach dropped. What was he planning? Why return to the gym? Had he set up a final trap? When they arrived, the gym was eerily quiet. The lights were dim and no one was around. But there, in the center of the gym, was Maxwell, standing by the same equipment Sophie had used months ago. What was he waiting for? Before they could move closer, the sound of a door creaking open echoed behind them. Sophie spun around, her breath catching. Who was it? Was this the moment Maxwell would make his final move? Or had they walked right into another of his carefully set traps? Sophie's heart raced as the door creaked open behind her. Who was it? Was Maxwell not alone? Her eyes scanned the room, the silence pressing down like a heavy weight. She felt the chill in the air, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Sophie turned to Claire, who was already motioning for her to stay low. They weren't safe yet. A figure stepped into the gym's dimly lit space. It wasn't Maxwell. It was Rachel, but her eyes were wide with fear and her face pale. She was shaking, and the last thing Sophie expected was for Rachel to be here standing in front of them. "What are you doing here?" Sophie asked, her voice trembling. Rachel's gaze darted to the dark corners of the gym, her breath shallow. "Maxwell? He's gone." "But he didn't leave, Sophie. He's already set things in motion. He's coming for you." The words hit Sophie like a punch. She could feel the world shifting beneath her feet. Was it over? Or was this just another one of Maxwell's traps? Another twisted game? Before Sophie could react, Claire's phone rang again. The voice on the other end was frantic. "Detective, you need to come to the back. There's something here. We found it. It's Maxwell's." Sophie's pulse quickened. Had they missed something? Was Maxwell still one step ahead? As they rushed to the back, Sophie couldn't shake the thought. Maxwell had been the master of deception, always one move ahead. But in the end, would he escape justice? The gym doors slammed shut behind them as they entered, the truth finally starting to unfold. Would they catch Maxwell before he disappeared for good? Or had they lost him forever?